Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about math practice number 1, which is make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. So when given a problem, I can make a plan, carry out my plan, and check my answer. So in the case in the video clip, the baseball video clip that you guys just saw, if Sam can paint a house in 3 hours, Joe in 5, together how long will it take them to paint the house? So in my classroom, we would kind of carry back over here to a before and think about the problem. What do I need to know about the problem? What is the problem asking? And come up with a plan. So during, I'm going to stick to this plan and ask myself, does this make sense? What do I know? So we did know that Joe can paint a house in 3, or Joe can paint a house in 5, excuse me, and Sam can paint a house in 3. And the most important part is just sticking to our plan through this process. Next, we would look at our after. So does my answer make sense? Did I reach this exactitude of the problem? So for example, is there a formula that I could use as well in persevering through this problem to verify that answer? With that is math practice number 1.
Welcome to math practice standard number 2. Number 2 says that the students will be able to reason abstractly and quantitatively. They will be able to use reasoning habits to help me contextualize and decontextualize problems. So we're thinking word problems here. Contextualize. Take numbers, make it into a word problem. So maybe I have a box of balls here. Maybe I can fit 50 balls in each box. And I have 5 boxes. And I want to know how many balls there are. Sure, why not? We can do that. But decontextualize, that's the main thing. Can I take numbers that are out of context and work mathematically with them? So let's think about this. Let's say I have no idea how many balls fit in a box. I do know how to find the volume of a box. I also know how to find a volume of a tennis ball, which has a diameter of 2.7 inches. So I could figure that out. The kids would do that. But then they would start shoving balls into their box. Their balls don't fit. Why not? That's when we start talking about the space in between the balls. Good luck, Standard 3.
Hello. I am introducing Math Practice Standard 3. Construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. I can make conjectures and critique the mathematical thinking of others. So I can show this in one of my R1. Here, the student takes an object that they draw in line, Indian headdress, Xbox controller, or camera, whatever they chose. And they have to juxtaposition it with shatter lines that they have to come up with. Usually these are mathematical. They have to have somewhat even numbers for it to usually work. They shatter the object by dividing the object with lines. They problem solve by contrasting the value gradients to be even and equal. And they have to work these out kind of in the sense of ones and zeros, where every shape that's broken up has its own value, and they have to figure out each shape which way it's going to go and keep it all opposite and contrasting so they can see the form and the shattering. And they have to, part of the problem solving is keeping a balance. Either it's symmetrical or asymmetrical balance throughout the piece. So it's not too white or too dark. It has a good balance. Now math teachers don't have to actually do the artwork. This is actually a long process, but they can do simple art pieces that are related to math, or they can find art images online that have mathematical properties, and there's tons out there. And at the end, when we are done, they put them up on the wall in a classroom discussion. We have a critique, and they're actively listening to each other, how they came up with their shatter values, how they came up with their objects, and they compare and contrast each work as far as, is it successful, not successful, how can they make improvements to it by giving suggestions, so it's a more successful piece. This is how I incorporate Math Practice 3 into this lesson.
Alrighty, in today's lesson, as you know, we're getting into the 60s, and in the 60s we had space exploration. Space exploration requires a lot of math. Well, this is a history class. Math is very important with regard to what we're about to do. And what we're going to do is use this model where you recognize math in everyday life and use math, you know, to solve everyday problems. You're going to make assumptions and estimate a certain distance. Then you're going to identify important quantities and evaluate your answer and make changes if needed. Okay? So here's what our example is going to be. The space shuttle, let's assume that it travels at 15,000 miles per hour as a constant. How long would that take to get to the moon? And you'll notice I don't have the number of miles that it is to the moon, so you're going to have to look that up. Then what I want you to do is compare that number with the Apollo 11, which goes 25,000 miles per hour. Which would get there faster and which would get there more efficiently, okay? Then I want you to look up Mars and find out how far Mars and Pluto are from Earth and try to figure out the same exact example. Now I'm going to tell you that these are variables because the planets rotate and they're not always at the same place with each other. So you may come up with different numbers, but as long as you use your logic and use your numbers all the way through, you should come up with the correct answer on that, okay? These are the steps. We're going to make an assumption and estimate, so just guess what you think it would be to the moon. Then we'll identify important quantities, which are the totals here, here, and here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to evaluate and make changes based on the knowledge that we gather from this. Is everybody clear on that?
Hi guys, me again. I'm going to be discussing Math Practice Standard 5, which is I know when to use certain tools to help me explore and deepen my math understanding. In history class, we often use charts and graphs, and in this case, I'm going to be talking about the use of Vietnam War statistics and how that creates civil unrest because the African American community was overwhelmingly featured in draftees in the Vietnam War, and that led to conscientious objectors and also to a lot of the race riots that existed in the 1960s. So that's how I would re-emphasize the use of tools in my history class, my U.S. history class. Okay, hi everyone. This week we are working on Math Practice Standard 6, and it's attending to precision. The standard suggests that students can use precision when solving problems and then communicate those ideas accurately. In history class, I asked students to calculate the number of nuclear warheads during the Cold War that would be required to destroy the US and the USSR in 1961. I was giving them a data set, a series of maps and nuclear warhead blast ratios, and then they were supposed to collaborate and calculate precisely how many nuclear warheads would be required to destroy the entire land mass and population during that year. So this is another way that math can be used to apply in U.S. history.
Math Practice 7 asks students to look for and make use of structure. Can students see and understand how numbers and spaces are organized and put together as parts and wholes? Students have to pay particular attention to dimension, location, and transformation. I use this in my English class. My creative writing students are evaluating a short story by John Updike called A and P. There are a few characters in there who have very interesting names that connect to the setting of the story, which takes place in a supermarket. One of the characters that's pivotal is Sammy. The other is a character called Queenie. Updike writes about the supermarket and describes how the floor is like a checkerboard. One of my students said, "Hey, Mr. M, the queen in chess can move wherever she wants in the game. She can go diagonally, she can go sideways, she can go backwards. She's the most powerful piece on the board." And then we started analyzing Sammy. What piece would he be? And they said, oh, he'd be a pawn because he can only move from here to the register to bagging, right? So the space, the layout, the dimensions of the store were limiting to the characters. Here comes in this character who can do whatever she wants, wear whatever she wants, act however she wants. And here's Sammy, who's trapped with his identity, stuck and rooted to one spot by a cash register. So, you know, the character transforms throughout the story, realizing that he's stuck working this dismal job. He doesn't like the location he's at. He doesn't like the dimensions, the restrictive clothing, the restrictive atmosphere of his occupation. He wants to be like Queenie, a free spirit. That's how I apply Math Practice 7 in my English class.
Hi, I'm here to talk to you about Math Practice Standard number 8. Math Practice Standard number 8 asks students to look for and express regularity in repeated reasoning. In math, this would look like students noticing when calculations are repeated. In English, this would look like looking for repetition in a text. For example, when we're reading a novel, we always have students notice a repeated image, a repeated color perhaps, because these are going to be symbolic and something that the student should pay attention to. I just did something with repetition with my EL students. We read a poem, Life Doesn't Frighten Me by Maya Angelou, and I asked them first when they're annotating just to look for repeated phrases or repeated words. In this case, the repeated phrase was life doesn't frighten me at all. Then we went through and explicated the poem a bit more. So Math Practice Standard number 8, noticing repetition, is really critical for English as well. Students need to notice certain elements of the text. They need to notice repetition within the text because it's going to help them gain meaning and it's going to give them a richer experience with that literature. In the end, this is also going to help them become better writers.